and defending clients that might not be so popular or might be unlikable or controversial.
That's a minor way of putting it.
We could talk about some of the clients that you've defended, and you can there's an ugly laundry list of names from Klaus von Bülow to O.J. Simpson to Mike Tyson and Jeffrey Epstein. And so I want to know, first and foremost, what is your moral reasoning behind taking the cases of these clients?
Okay, that's a great question. And part of the reason I take the most controversial cases and the cases of the most hated people in this country is because I was a law professor with tenure, which meant I had no excuse for not defending the most despised people. I couldn't say, I worry about my job. By the way, today, I'm not sure tenure will protect you against defending some of the most despised people in the world. But if the most despised people don't get a defense, it moves on to everybody. H.L. Mencken once said that the reason we have to defend the civil liberties of the world's worst SOBs is because the way the government works is first they make bad laws and apply them to the worst people. Once they have that precedent established, they then apply them to the rest of us. And so, look, I'm a criminal defense lawyer. Let me make an admission here tonight. The vast majority of my clients have been guilty. Thank God for that. Would anyone want to live in a country where the vast majority of people accused of crime are innocent? That's Iran. That's China. That's Russia. That's Venezuela. That's Cuba. That's not the United States of America. Thank God we have a system that only tries to go after the guilty. And why does that system still work? Because criminal defense lawyers don't make it easy for prosecutors. We press them. We attack them. We challenge them. We tell them that unless you have the goods, we're going to beat you. And that way, they only go after people who they believe are guilty. If we let up for a moment, if lawyers wouldn't represent the rogues gallery of people that you've told me about, and I don't like most of my clients, I have to tell you that. But if I didn't represent people like that, first of all, I couldn't teach my students to do it. People say, they deserve a representation, but they don't deserve you. No, they deserve me. Because I was a tenured professor and I was teaching legal ethics for 40 years. And if I didn't defend those people, then the government would start going after people who are very marginal. People say that a conservative is a liberal who's been mugged. Okay? I understand that. But a civil libertarian is a conservative whose kid's been busted for pot, whose father-in-law has been arrested for insider trading. Once a loved one is indicted or arrested, suddenly you fall in love with criminal defense attorneys. And I hope none of you fall in love with me, because I don't want to have to represent any of you. But if your children, grandchildren, nieces, and nephews need a lawyer, Carolyn knows, my wife knows, I'm there 24 hours a day. We have people on Martha's Vineyard who have called me in the middle of the night because their kid has been busted or drunken driving or expelled from school. And I defend them all pro bono. And I do a pretty good job. But once I was perceived as in any way supporting President Trump, this same group of people whose kids I have saved, whose kids I have helped, stopped talking to me. Not only stopped talking to me, but said to people they needed trigger warnings. They want to know before they come to an event, is Dershowitz going to be there? If he is, we're not coming. It's okay if my wife's there. But if I'm going to be there, they want to know in advance, and they don't want to come. The hypocrisy, the unbelievable hypocrisy that operates is beyond belief. But I'm going to continue to represent people you hate and people I hate. And I think of myself in some ways, the analogy isn't perfect. As a doctor in the emergency room, my daughter-in-law is an emergency room doctor. My son was a legal aid lawyer, and remarkably, once in the same week, they had the same patient client, and it was Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson was wheeled into the emergency ward, having just had an accident in his car. My daughter-in-law took care of him. And then a short time later, my son was part of our defense team for Mike Tyson. So you never know who's going to be wheeled into the emergency room, whose kid is going to get busted in the middle of the night. And we never want to see a system. You know, I worked in the Soviet Union for many years. I was talking to Mr. Spiro before, who's from the Soviet Union. I was there in the 70s. In the Soviet Union, if you were charged with a crime against the state, you could not get a lawyer. We figured out a terrific technique. I was representing refuseniks, people who were trying to get out of the country and they wouldn't let them out. So what we finally did is we signed up a bunch of Jewish lawyers to be our co-counsel, and the next day they all got exit visas. So people were saying, you want to get out of the Soviet Union? Join Dershowitz's defense team. And we got a whole bunch of people out that way.
And you know, you mentioned President Trump. I want to talk about Trump. We're going to talk about the Mueller report. We're going to talk about impeachment.
Sure.
But while we're on the topic of due process, and I think you'll find a room full of people here at the Steamboat Institute who value due process and the presumption of innocence. But I want to ask you about the Me Too movement, because this is something that has affected at least our cultural perceptions of the presumption of innocence. The Kavanaugh hearing, certainly a big part of that. And before I do that, Professor, I have to ask you about the accusation that's been leveled against you.
I am a victim of the Me Too movement.
Well, Virginia Roberts has named many powerful men as people that she says she was directed to have sex with by Jeffrey Epstein. What do you say to this?
Well, I never met the woman. I never heard of her. I never met her. And we got some emails recently that were sealed. They tried to seal them. They first tried to deep six it. We subpoenaed the emails. The lawyers for her said they didn't have any, but we finally got them. And in the emails, she admits that in 2011, which is 9 years after she claimed she had sex with me 7 different times, in places I never was at, islands, ranches, airplanes, in front of my own house, she said I had sex with her. And then she came into my house. At the time, I had a young daughter. We had video surveillance. In any event, she said she had sex with me in 2002. Then in 2011, she writes an email proving she never heard of me. She has to be told, oh, Dershowitz, he's the guy who represented Klaus von Bülow. He's famous. You should put him in your book. This is all in emails. You should put him in your book because he will help you sell the book. So then she puts me in the book as someone she did not have sex with. She said she had sex with Professor Steve. She said she had sex with Leslie Wexner. She said she had sex with George Mitchell. She said she had sex with Bill Richardson. She said she had sex with you name it. But she said she did not have sex with me. She once met me with Jeffrey Epstein. Then, when she meets her lawyers a few years later, suddenly she remembers. She gets woke. She remembers, oh, yeah, that guy I never heard of, I had sex with him 7 times. And how anybody could believe this is remarkable to me. So I hired the former head of the FBI, Louis Freeh, who was a former federal judge, and I said, here, you do this. I'm not going to even talk to you. I'm not going to be involved with you. Here are all my travel records. You do an investigation. He did an investigation. He said there was absolutely no truth to the charges. I was never on the places she said she was. I have all my travel records to prove it. What is her background? Her background is she gets paid $160,000 by the Daily Mail in order to lie about who she met on Jeffrey Epstein's island. So she said she met Tipper Gore and Al Gore on Jeffrey Epstein's island. There's only one problem. Neither of them ever met Jeffrey Epstein. They were never on the island, and Secret Service records prove it. They say, and here some of you will probably have some skepticism, she said in the same article that she had twice dinner with Bill Clinton in the presence of 2 underage girls, and Bill Clinton had been flown to the island in a black helicopter with Secret Service agents, piloted by a woman who had just gotten her license, her pilot's license. So we, of course, filed FOIA requests, Freedom of Information requests, and they proved he had never been on the island. He had been on his airplane, but never been on the island. So on the one hand, you have the word of a serial liar with no evidence, no proof, no witnesses. On the other side, you have overwhelming evidence of innocence that I never met her, and yet you go on Twitter, and I'm a pedophile, I'm a child rapist, you name it, and you can't get the media to tell this story. When I got these emails, I thought, oh my God, for sure, everybody would want to write the story. This is a woman who's been proved to be a liar. I could not get anybody in the media to write the story. I hope maybe some of you who are out there from the media, you would be interested in writing the story. I'd be happy to cooperate with you. But people asked me today on CNN, how will I get my name cleared? My name's been cleared. I don't have to clear my name. I've proved my innocence beyond any doubt. She has no proof of my guilt. Why is anybody believing her? The burden now is on the people to explain why they don't look at the evidence. But we live in a world where evidence no longer matters. We live in a post-truth world where identity politics prevails over everything else. And I'm going to fight that in my own case. I'm going to fight it in anybody else's case. The Me Too movement is great. It's wonderful. They have made people responsible for acts they've done in the past. By the way, in every Me Too case, the accuser and the accused knew each other. There was a relationship. Was it a consensual? Was it non-consensual? There was always a relationship. Mine is the only case where there is no evidence, because it didn't happen, that I ever met this woman or saw her or she ever saw me. So it's a remarkable case because it's totally black and white.
Why do you think that she's accusing you versus some of, the President Trump or Bill Clinton, some of these others that she no longer says any wrongdoing?
She told her best friend that, and we have it on tape. She told her best friend that she accused me because her lawyers pressured her into it, because here was the plot. There's a very wealthy man. He owns Victoria's Secret. His name is Leslie Wexner. Lives in Columbus, near Columbus, Ohio. So the plan was a very simple plan. Name Dershowitz in public, then go, lawyers, privately, secretly to Wexner and say to Wexner, you saw what happened to Dershowitz? You want that to happen to you? There are ways of resolving this. And that's what happened. We have the chronology, we have the dates, we have the time. We know that her lawyer went to speak to Wexner's lawyer. Wexner's lawyer used the word shakedown when he spoke to me about it. Wexner's wife used the word shakedown. So I was the perfect stalking horse for an extortion plot. As soon as this happened, I took the case to the U.S. Attorney's Office. I took the case to the District Attorney's Office. And I said, I want you to investigate me, and I want you to investigate the lawyers, and I want you to investigate my accusers. And I hope they do.
Thanks for answering those questions.
And thank you for giving me an opportunity to set the record straight.
I'm going to do a hard pivot and talk a little bit about President